Hello again. Welcome to the roundtable edition of the Vandy Sports Podcast, part of the 440 Sports Network. As always, I'm joined by Billy Derrick of Vandy Sports and friend of the show, Luke Wyatt. We will get into football topics today, maybe basketball and baseball topics, depending on what the mailbag brings us, which I've not looked at, so I'll be catching those blind. And before we get into everything, reminder, basketball season, and we were at Media Day yesterday in Mountain Brook, Alabama, Birmingham, whatever they call it officially. Joey Dwyer and I were there. Spent a lot of time with Mark Byington, Tyler Nickel, and AJ Hogard. So we put some interview content up on our YouTube channel. If you're listening to the podcast, go to just search YouTube for Vandy Sports. You'll find all that. All that's free. So we've got some of that up today. I think you'll enjoy that. Anyway, that and basketball season is presented by the Wash House. If you're dreading laundry day, if it is stealing time from the things that you truly enjoy, let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you with 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry. Our professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of. That's your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry ready to be put away. Check out washhouseclean.com. Stop in today. See my good buddy Stephen Andrews. Tell him you heard about his business on the Vandy Sports Podcast. Great guy, big Vanderbilt fan, and help out those who help our show. Baseball season, and we could talk some baseball because we've had a scrimmage against Nevada, although I didn't see it, just saw a few things in the highlights. If that comes up in the mailbag, we will touch on it, but that is presented by the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, a family-owned third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro. Partnership began 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, and North Georgia. They supply grocery stores, convenience stores, and others with purity products, as well as Mayfield, Nestle, Haagen-Dazs. For more information, visit their website at mpmci.com. Davey Chung, good friend of the show. They sponsor baseball season. Still looking for a football season sponsor. You would think there might be some interest in that, given the way that's gone. But if you're interested, chrislee70@gmail.com is where you go for your inquiries. All right, gentlemen, I've talked enough. Top of mind, I guess, Luke, the football win at Kentucky. We've not spoken with you since that happened. Let's get your thoughts there, please.
Well, I think we all three agreed that it was going to have to be a low-scoring possession game, and that's what it was. 20-13 was right on our bingo card, and I was so impressed again by how we started the game. We got a 97-yard drive to go up 7-0. I thought the defense had its best night of the season. Not that Kentucky's a great offense, but the way we played, no one got behind us. We had a couple of busts, but nothing major. The one to Barry Brown. And gosh, guys, right now we haven't trailed in any of the last 2 SEC games, and I'm not sure about Missouri. We've been within a score in all 3 SEC games the entire time. We have not gotten behind by 14 or 21 or something like that and having to fight to come back. Now, I will say, and I know I'm getting a little bit off track here, but I'm a little bit worried about everybody thinking we're going to blow out Ball State because I think their offense is pretty good.
Yeah, they've got a good tight end who has, and tight ends have given Vanderbilt some trouble. So you wonder if Vanderbilt does things a little bit differently with Ball State's tight end. But yeah, made some notes, went back and watched the Kentucky game. They were the aggressor early in that game, and I didn't have the best feeling as that game started. That felt like they were more physical than Vanderbilt early on. But after the first touchdown drive, that 97-yard drive in about 5 minutes, that set the tone, and that's exactly what Vanderbilt needed. I mean, that was clinical. Obviously, possessions were at a premium. I thought Trudell Berry's forced fumble was the play of the game. You can go back to a couple of those Pavia runs and, maybe Rinaldi's sack, but Kentucky felt like they were about to score there, and that was Vanderbilt's stolen possession. Kentucky had one with Pavia's pick, and I think that was right after the Pavia pick. Kentucky turned it right back over. Trudell Berry forced that fumble on Dane Key, and that was kind of a story of the night for Kentucky. They really just shot themselves in the foot. And to recenter and refocus after Miles Caper's injury, I thought was really impressive. And I think it encouraged them that he was, he was active. He obviously got wheeled off on the stretcher and headed to the hospital, but for him to come right back to the field and, and be serviceable, standing up, talking to guys, I thought that really helped them out. I was worried that might distract them. And naturally it's going to take you time to settle in. I thought that was really impressive. And Vandy won the middle eight, guys. That didn't happen a lot last year. It's starting to happen more often this year. And obviously the Pavia, we say injury. I don't think it's really an injury, but Clark did admit that he's probably a little sore right now, if anything. So I think that's obviously something to watch. But he was just gutsy, and the defense, they bended but didn't break. And that's starting to become a trend for this defense, Chris, where they may get driven down the field on, but they'll hold to a field goal, or for whatever reason, Missouri forgets how to line up and kick a field goal a few times against Vanderbilt. So does Kentucky. So I don't know if they're doing something on their field goal block, to where you can force a mishandled snap or a missed hold. But that's what's happened against Missouri. They didn't beat Missouri, but I thought those were two huge missed kicks there by Kentucky. So yeah, special teams were big too, especially Brock Taylor, who is they just keep sending him out there from 50 yards out.
Clark has always talked about playing complementary football. I think this is the first time they've really been able to do that. Luke hit on a key that they have been playing from ahead. I don't think this is a great play from behind offense, although they did come back from deficits against Missouri and Georgia State to make games interesting or send them to overtime. So there was that, but I don't know that is going to be when you're running so much clock by design, and they can speed that up, which they have. Anyway, the way it works ideally is the way they've been doing it, where they're playing from ahead. They're making special teams plays, as Billy pointed out. Brock Taylor's become a really, really good kicker, in my opinion. And I think in the opinion of most people who've watched him. So there's that. The offense was not spectacular. It did enough. They played from ahead all day. I think Kentucky is maybe a top 5 defense in America. I mean, they've got some dudes there. Now, they did not have Max Hairston, their stud cornerback, but on the defensive side for Vanderbilt didn't have Langston Patterson. It didn't have Miles Capers. I think those are their number 2 and number 4 tacklers this year. So those are big pieces for them. But look what you had in return. You had Nick Rinaldi step up and make a big play. You had Bryce Cowan step up and make a couple big plays that got wiped off the board, although one of them stood as a pass breakup. I think that everything just kind of fit together where they struggled a little bit. They had guys pick them up, and in the end, it was good enough because the total package came together.
You brought up Bryce Cowan. He's an enigma to me. The kid is an incredible athlete. He's got a great radius when he's out there. And when we're playing zone, he can make plays, get his hands on balls, and be in there. There's got to be a bigger role for him. And I understand you got Langston and Longwell, but my goodness, he has played when his name is called, he's made plays. He reminds me again, I've brought this guy up before on the podcast, Billy Cunningham, a guy who played in the 80s, who was not a great practice player, wasn't the best at everything off the field, but when it came to game days, he was superb. And I think Bryce fits in that category.
Yeah, and Chris, you mentioned it, I think, on the board that he had only played 2 snaps, I think, up until that Kentucky game, which is crazy to me. But, going back, we talk about how good the linebacker room was and still is. Langston, Patterson, and Brian Longwell had gotten the lion's share, of course, and you saw some Rinaldi, you saw some Colley. I think Cowan was just sort of that 5th guy that, it's hard to find action for him, but I think maybe Patterson going down gave him that motivation, and he played really well against Kentucky. Almost had 2 turnovers. They both got called back. I thought that fumble there was close. Vandegrift, I mean, that was really close. And then the interception, he kind of stole it away from C.J. Taylor, but it would have been picked off by either one of those guys. But you're right, Luke. For Cowan to be as good as he was without playing much at all just shows you how good that linebacker room is and the depth they have. Because I thought Colley and Rinaldi played pretty well against Kentucky as well.
Yeah.
The other thing, the offensive line, guys, I'm not saying it's vintage 2022 Georgia, but it's gotten better. I think the move of Castillo to center to get a bigger guy on what's going to generally be a bigger body right at that spot, especially against SEC teams, was a move that's worked out. Billy, I remember we went to practice. I think it was the first scrimmage, and I remember making this comment. You guys kind of agreed. I said, that offensive line isn't great at opening gaping holes, but what it's good at is opening up holes for 2 and 3 yards at a time. Felt like they did that pretty well. That works with this offense as long as they're not getting penalties or taking a sack. Like if they can get in 3rd and 3 or less, heck, they can get in 3rd and 9. They're a threat with Diego at this point. But if you can get 3 and 3, then that sets you up for 3rd and 4, and they're converting first downs at a rate higher than anybody in the conference. And the line is starting to open up some bigger holes here and there against some talented defenses. So good offensive line coach, as we know, coming in, improvement in strength and conditioning. You've seen a lot of things come together in a lot of places right now.
Well, the other, I'm sorry, Joey. I mean, Billy.
No, you're good.
Joey, you don't
Whoever
remember.
you are.
The quick thing about, they had 2 weeks to prepare for us, guys, and they still couldn't stop. I mean, they slowed us down offensively some, but they still couldn't figure it out. And to go 97 yards on that defense, Georgia couldn't go 40 yards on that defense at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who else will play that has a better defense. Maybe Texas. I don't know. Maybe LSU. I don't know. But I don't think we'll see anything any better than what we saw Saturday.
Yeah, and I want to go back to your offensive line thing, Chris. And I think a big part of that was the move to Castillo at center. And Clark was asked about it on Tuesday. He said a lot of times you can get away with a smaller center because you can get him help where he needs help. Obviously, the athleticism to snap the ball and to get to your combo or get to your block is a part of what makes that position so unique. That position is also a processor. So much funnels through the center. And Castillo is a smart player, Clark said. So sometimes you compromise the size because those other things become important factors. But you're not compromising size with Castillo either. I mean, he looks like a totally transformed player. You go back and watch some of those runs. I mean, he's clearing guys out. Hubbard, I thought, played really well against Kentucky. And then Cedric Alexander. At times, what's really interesting about this offense, guys, they can be a power run game type offense, but they can also go, okay, you want to load up the box? Boom, boom, quick throws. It's what Tim Beck has done is just my favorite word, Joey and I's favorite word is clinical. He's just sitting back. He's reading the defense, and Pavia, him and coach and quarterback, him and Pavia are, it's like they're the same person. They read. Pavia can make checks, and it's just fun to watch. You don't ever know what's coming. Richie Hoskins is play up the middle on a perfect throw from Pavia, and then to roll out right when you have Skinner one-on-one down the left side, but you roll right and hit Hoskins for a touchdown. I don't think we could have predicted that, Chris. So it's just, you just never know what's coming.
It's the best coach Vanderbilt football team I have ever covered right now. Now we're halfway point, could change, but Luke said something that it occurred to me this morning. Kentucky had an off week to prepare for this. Still got beat. Was at home, night game, big crowd. Nobody else on the schedule is going to have a bye week to prepare for Vanderbilt.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Chris and Billy, I didn't realize this. Kentucky is 2-10 in their last 12 SEC home games.
Yep.
They play much better on the road for some reason, for whatever reason. Some teams do that. And I guess it's that chip gets on their shoulder a little bigger maybe when they go on the road. I fully expect them to win at Florida Saturday.
I do too. And they just beat Ole Miss in its building.
Yeah, in Oxford. Yeah. A team that everyone was talking about could win the SEC or at least be in the top 3.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it would.
Yeah. And that's something, you get the Kentucky, I heard from a lot of their side of things. They said they get home and there's so much pressure on them. They feel the pressure to perform. For Vanderbilt this year, whether you're at home or on the road, you don't have more fans than the other team typically, right? I mean, Alcorn stayed at home, right? There was a good amount of Vanderbilt fans, and maybe that changes down the stretch here. Maybe Texas is more 50-50, but I just think the exterior factors of Vanderbilt, people saying you can't do this. Y'all are Vanderbilt. Barryon Brown in the video that they released, I don't know if you guys watched it, but he was talking trash before the game. Just, people still don't respect Vanderbilt for
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons, obviously, but it's they're Vanderbilt football, but they're quickly changing that this year, Chris. I think obviously it starts with coaching. And I wonder when the country is going to sit here and say, hey, this Vanderbilt team is legit. It's hard for a lot of people, but they are.
They are a complete outlier. They are so hard to quantify. Now if you want to quantify, I'll give you something. I remember I said before the season, if they're going to be a little better, they got to be a lot better. And I just thought that was too tough of an ask. Because they probably got to be 14 points better to start winning games. They are. They are. I mean, I'm the little points above average model I keep. I'll give you the number. They started the year at 6.6 below average. They are now at 5.7 above average. So that's what, 12 points and change, 12.3. I mean, that's, if you want to, now I'll tell you this. I think they're better than that. I think they're better than that.
Luke said they'd be a touchdown better on either side. I mean, Luke, we're getting close to 2 touchdowns better on either side at this point.
I think the models don't right now. And look, let me be clear. It is a thin edge, right? Like they've turned the ball over twice all year. The chances are the last half of the season they're going to turn it over more than that, just because that's really hard to do. Well, but they're not going to be a team that's going to bowl a lot of teams out, other than like the Alcorn States and who knows, maybe Ball State turns out that way. So that like all the game they played in 5 games that have gone down to the final minute, and 2 that have gone into overtime. So that like that's part of the thing too, that the models that do predictions and stuff don't build. They're playing. Their ceiling is limited in those models because they are playing in so many close games. They're not going to blow out somebody, but I mean, man, they have just engineered this whole thing to perfection so far. And it's not anything that you see. I mean, I could argue right now they've got the toughest offense to prepare for in the country. I mean, Army, Navy, Air Force would be in that discussion. But here's the difference. I don't know that those teams have got
the personnel.
It's not like their receivers and tight ends or what Georgia had when they won national titles, but their quality, they're better than we thought. I mean, I don't think Army's got a Quincy Skinner or I haven't watched them. I'm making an assumption, so maybe I'm wrong. But I'm guessing they don't have a Quincy Skinner or a Junior Sherrill or a Stowers or a Spence, who I think still there's a lot of good football out there for him that we haven't seen. And I think that's what makes them more difficult. And plus the teams that usually play Army and Navy are used to seeing that year in and year out.
Yeah.
Nobody in the league sees anything like this. And I don't even know when's the last time an SEC team played a service academy. I think LSU used to play Army, so that's part of it. So there's, but not a lot.
No, you know, it's if you look, you got Army and Navy are both in the top 25. We're 26. So if you're unique, it's obviously working, because here's the reason. Like you said, Chris, no one else will have 2 weeks to prepare for us. Kentucky did. It still didn't win. So these other teams that are losing to Army and Navy, understanding their schedule's weaker, but still, unless they've got 2 weeks to prepare for that option game, it's a tough deal, man, because if one of your 11 guys messes up, it's assignment football. And if you don't do it to perfection, you'll get your butt beat every time, because even if you do it 9 times out of 10, right, that 10th time it's going to go for a 60-yard run or something.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up one other thing I'm very impressed with, and I want to get you guys' thoughts on it. The way that the backs are blocking and the way that the receivers and tight ends are blocking is the best I've ever seen at Vanderbilt, period. Even back when DiNardo was here and we ran the I-bone, you had to depend on the receivers to block and all that, but this is the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cedric Alexander, he was on Cole Kubelik's block party. He he got the that award there the other night. But Clark said he got Offensive Player of the Week too for his blocking, purely blocking. And guys, you go back. I don't know if y'all watched the game, but on those two long Pavia runs, those are led by some Cedric Alexander clear out blocks. I mean, he's clocking dudes, just decleating them. So, and he's not the biggest guy, but you can tell that was an emphasis with Ghali Muhammad Langford, the new running back coach. And that's why they made a change. They looked back at the film last year and said the way these guys were coached last year, that can't operate. I'm guessing that was Tim Beck said that can't operate in our offense. I'm going to bring Muhammad Langford in here. And you could tell that was just a massive shift, but not just Cedric Alexander. I mean, the extra effort too, when these guys like Vanderbilt has gotten their playmakers the ball with 4 or 5 yards to spare, and it's up to them to go get the first down. I've noticed that, whether it's Richie Hoskins. Newberry had a heck of a first down. I mean, just the yards after catch. I mean, these guys catch the ball, and they're falling forward, whether it's the receivers or the running backs. Like, that's just the way these offensive players are coached to block, but also finish plays. This is one of the better offensive staffs in the SEC. I really do believe that. But it's a lot because of the personnel. It's a lot of these coaches wouldn't look as good without the right personnel, and they knew they had enough this year. Now they've got to stay healthy, but I think Pavia just coming in and building that physicality and that toughness too, Chris. Like, I'm with you, Luke. I don't know that Vanderbilt's ever blocked. I mean, I remember the Franklin days, Chris, whether it was Krause, those guys blocked really well, but it's all built around Pavia, and they don't want to lose, and they know that blocking, they've got to block. And I can't get over Cedric Alexander. A lot of his blocks against Kentucky. I mean, he was decking dudes.
Well, James Franklin did an incredible job when he was here. I don't think he ever coached a team better than this one's being coached. And last year, the last few years, I've just almost dreaded doing the podcast because it's like, how do you break down another 51-13 beatdown in a way that's different than you did? And this year, it's completely the opposite. And I'll give you the example. I think I brought this up last week. Didn't Brian Longwell get some sort of National Defender of the Week award last week? Like, we did a whole post-game show, and I don't think we even mentioned Brian Longwell. We were talking about things like that. Like, you'll get a couple of days unpacked from this, and like, oh yeah, there's another thing that they're doing really well that we haven't even talked about, or I haven't even thought about. There's so many positives this year to unpack that it's almost dizzying because you get lost in the moment. You identify 3, 4, 5, and there was something else out there you didn't get to. And it's look, now I still think, let me be clear, I still think it's going to be a tough path to get to 6 or 7 wins. I think they can. There's not a lot of margin for error, but man, all we can talk about is what they've done. And really the only flaw you can pick in anything they've done this year is not being prepared for Georgia State, which I'm sure they regret to a large degree, but it's what's done's done.
I had lunch Monday with someone who's inside the program, and I was asking him some questions and things that he can share and can't share. And one of the things he told me was, he said, look, he goes, Diego's great. He said, but what people don't understand, there's about 9 or 10 guys inside that locker room that are dudes that care and keep everybody in line. And if you see any slippage, they're on top of them. That's what it takes to have a winning team. It really does.
Yeah.
It's so overused, the word culture, but when you bring in Beck, Kill, and then you have a quarterback who knows the system on the offensive side of the ball, and then you have guys on the defensive side that you brought in. In the past, guys, we brought in some guys, like when Coach Mason was there, we brought in some transfers from Ohio State and whatever, but they were kind of cancerous from the other team, and we brought in problems. The guy done us a heck of a job, knock on wood, bringing in guys who want to win and see that they can be an integral part in turning Vanderbilt around, and they care about it.
That's the other thing. The personality of the team is kind of interesting because Pavia brings in that confidence and that it's not like an over-the-top, in-your-face swagger. It's just an inner confidence. Now, I have a couple other guys that cross that line into another territory. One's probably C.J. Taylor, who flat out told us they were going to beat Alabama. I don't know that you want to be putting that out there maybe. And then I think Colby Taylor at times has really been an antagonist. And I think there were times we wondered, like, is he even going to survive the month of September without getting booted off the team, for this or that? But I think a little bit of that personality, and I don't really like it. It's not something I would teach my kid to do, but there's a little bit of that edge that even if it goes over the edge at times, that I think they kind of needed. And I think they get that from a few guys on this team. And that's not something they've had.
Yeah. And I asked Clark about that on one of the pressers because I was interested in his answer. Like, what's the line for you, Clark? Because obviously this season, it hasn't affected them too much. Yeah. I think Chase Mitchell had an unsportsmanlike against Missouri. But I don't think Colby Taylor's been flagged for anything extra unless it's once, but it hasn't been an issue. You saw against Kentucky, Vanderbilt just sort of let them win the trash talking battle, and they ended up hurting themselves. Dane Key shoved the football in Martell Hite's face. Like that's what you're seeing Vanderbilt not do. Mm-hmm. They're using it to their advantage. And Clark said, when I asked him about it, if you ever play pickup basketball with me, you'll know I like to trash talk. And so I think that talk, that edge, that not crossing the line, that's in Clark's DNA. And as a fullback, I would imagine, Luke, I don't know if you remember anything of him as a player, but I would imagine Clark would let you know about it, if he just decked you too. Like, I think that's in Clark's DNA. But Chris, it's interesting that for Vanderbilt this season, it hasn't killed them. They haven't had those unsportsmanlike, and you saw Saturday, Luke, Kentucky did. And Vanderbilt all of a sudden, at least in the last couple of games, is a team that doesn't beat themselves, and they will let the opponent beat themselves. And that's exactly what Kentucky did.
Yeah.
Billy, you made a good point there. You're seeing kids on other teams come unglued. And so I don't know how much stuff goes on, talk and mental games and things that we don't even notice until you see Dane Key or somebody get a penalty. But Malachi Moore, who's a fourth-year senior and has played a lot of football at Alabama, just completely lost his mind.
Yeah,
for about 2 or 3 minutes straight at the end of that Vandy game. I do wonder. I hadn't really thought of it until now, but there's a little bit of a mental battle going on that they are winning right now.
I think what it is, guys, is how frustrating it is to try to stop our offense.
Yeah,
and the frustration level just boils over. Because Malachi Moore, at the end of that game, he's probably thinking when he takes the field, we're going to stop Vandy. They're not going to get a first down. We'll get the ball back and win the game. And the fact that even though they defended it pretty well, we still were able to get 2 first downs on them when they knew they had to stop us. They 100% knew they had to stop us. With all their 5 stars and 4 stars, they couldn't do it. And that's frustrating. That's why he just kicked his mouthpiece and kicked the football and shoved Diego's head in the ground because he's like, can't believe we aren't good enough to stop this.
Let me get one more note out there, Chris. I know we got to get to the mailbag, but Kentucky was ranked number 14 in the country in third down defense coming into last Saturday's game. So, and that was the talk, this game's going to be tough. You're going on the road. Kentucky's got a great defense. They've even been called elite at times. After facing Vanderbilt, they're now ranked number 55 in the country in third down defense. So this Vanderbilt offense is flipping teams' stats that dramatically, which I think is noteworthy. They did a little bit of that to Alabama too. Alabama was pretty good on third downs coming into that game, and for Vanderbilt to not have a 3 and out, I mean, it's been 2 weeks. They haven't gone 3 and out in the last 2 games. Like, that's unheard of.
Yeah.
I had one more thing. Oh, I know what it was. I know the defense is relatively the concern on this team, but they still haven't given up more than 34 points yet. Feels like maybe in Kentucky, maybe a lot of it was probably Kentucky, right? Kentucky's offense, I think, has some issues, but sometimes you gain some confidence. This is another week to maybe gain some confidence. I know Ball State's offense has put up some numbers, but they've also come up really empty against like James Madison and who else? Miami killed them. I think shut them out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've done it with Patterson banged up and out last week. You had Colby Taylor miss a couple games, a game or two earlier. You had Capers, that's who it was, missed 2.5 quarters last week. Zaylen Wood hasn't been a factor. And Zaylen Wood was maybe their best defender in the Virginia Tech game, has not even been a factor because of health since then. I mean, that's a guy that's in the garage parked, ready to go if they can get him back. Sidner's been hurt. He's one of their better defensive linemen. I mean, I think that while everybody's looking at the offense, I don't think their defense is going to be like elite or anything, but I think we feel like it's got a shot to play better. And I feel like we're seeing maybe a little bit of that, and then add health to it, and who knows what you get.
Well, we talked about those 2 corners that we lost before the season started.
Yeah.
If you had those 2 to add to that defense, I mean, we're a touchdown better on the defensive side of the ball, but we could be 10 to 12 points better if we had a couple of corners.
If they have those corners, they don't lose the Georgia State game. I'm pretty confident in that.
No, and probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris, I told Joey this. They make enough plays. They buckled down. They were gashed a little bit there against Kentucky, and I was a little confused why Kentucky didn't continue to run the football. But they don't give up that massive backbreaking play anymore. I mean, against Missouri, you had a long run, but I thought they did a really good job with Barryon Brown offensively, and he was frustrated. He just couldn't get loose. He would get 10, 15 yards, but he wasn't getting his 40, 50 yards, which they've bracketed well on star receivers. They've caged the quarterback, and I wonder why, guys. I mean, look who's leading this defense, and I think he's made a little bit more of an impact than I even originally thought, because I still think they were a couple of players away defensively from making full impacts in games. But I mean, a Rinaldi sack, ended up really winning the game there and closing it out for Vanderbilt. So, which you made a good point, Chris. A couple of walk-ons, Rinaldi and Hoskins, were two huge players in that game.
Mm-hmm. I will push back a little bit. They have given up some backbreakers. They just did enough to offset them, like the Ryan Williams catch. That was a backbreaker. Felt like a couple weeks ago they gave up the 60
but like last year
yard run to Noel.
Yeah,
but there maybe has been as many of them.
Many, yeah. I mean, last year, it was 5-6 a game, and you're, next thing you know, boom, 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 you're down 21-0, and you're out of the game.
They get some sack stops every now and then too, or get a pick, and that wasn't something that was. I mean, they had a decent interception number last year, but they were so bad otherwise that it just didn't matter.
Yeah, and they leverage well too. I thought like any time there's a toss sweep, Vanderbilt's not getting outran, and they've got better athletes too. That's another big part of it this year. It helps when you have a guy like Randon Fontenette out there making seemingly just about every other tackle.
Billy, are we about ready for the mailbag? Let me let Luke go first. I'm sorry.
Make one little quick thing. Just think about it, guys. Darren Agu was starting for 2 years.
Yeah.
He don't see the
plays.
Yeah.
Yeah, credit to the depth too. Like guys like a Christian James, who I feel like he's been here forever, was banged up last year, came up huge in that game 2022 against Kentucky. But you go back, watch every other play when he's in there, he's mauling some offensive linemen. I mean, Christian James has made an impact. Issa Wataha, that horse collar was a bad call. That was not a horse collar. Now I can see why they called it, and I don't know if that's a fragment of the rule where it was that close, but I mean, Wataha, he's continued to play well too. So credit to Black and Hay and those defensive line guys.
Billy, before we get the mailbag, got to get my focus together here. It's been a week. I was at Media Day yesterday in Alabama, getting back to football today. And when I need focus, I use Magic Mind. The nice folks at Magic Mind reach out to me to sample their product this spring. It is designed to help you with focus. Guess what it has? It is a mental performance shot that keeps you clear and motivated and reduces stress. And boy, I need that some days. It's given me a clear head and much needed focus. It is not a coffee replacement. There are no quick fixes, but it is an addition to your morning routine with time release caffeine. If you want scientific explanations, here you go. 12 all-natural ingredients to support your body's energy engine, mushroom nootropics and adaptogens, over 100% of your daily vitamin C and D in every bottle, doctor validated with over 200 scientific studies behind every ingredient. Magic Mind donates 5 cents of every bottle sold to mental health charities that help U.S. homeless communities. It is so confident it can help you that if you order the product, you will get your money back 100%, no questions asked if you don't like it. So help out the folks who help out our show. Check out Magic Mind, magicmind.com/Vandy Sports. Use the promo code Vandy Sports 20. You can get 20% off a one-time purchase or 48% off a subscription. Help out the folks who help us and discover Magic Mind, where flow state awaits you.
All right. Let's start with Ann Arbor Door. This is, I think, the only baseball question. Vanderbilt played Nevada in baseball last weekend in Las Vegas. Were there any notable performances in Vanderbilt's 2 wins in that series? Made some notes. 14 different pitchers pitched an inning each. They combined to strike out 22 and walk 4 in 14 innings. So pretty good pitching performances there. Game 1, they won 6-4. Game 2, they won 10-1. Home runs from J.D. Rogers, Rustin Rigdon, and Mike Mancini. So that's really all they put out in a release. So no official stats, but that's what I got, Chris. I don't know if you heard anything else.
No, it's been third on my radar behind basketball and football. I mean, I did watch Twitter and see that stuff. And by the way, I also went to batting practice last week too for about an hour. So saw a little bit of that. I'll tell you what did stand out. I think their 2 best power hitters by far right now look like Holcomb and Brody Johnson, who I think is going to be a stud for them this year.
Chris, how does the Kobe Croft kid look?
Inconclusive. I haven't seen him enough. I mean, by the way, they do have I'm glad you mentioned that. I'd completely forgotten. I got the email in the middle of being down in Birmingham. They've got it the David Williams Classic this weekend starting Friday. So I'll try to go down and see some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Friday, Tuesday, and then next Friday. All of those are at 6:00. Free admission. Outside food and drink is permitted, and infield seating will be available. So go check out the Vandy boys. Theodore 8. All right, going over to football. Over under 2.5 more wins this season. I was thinking about that when I checked out the questions, and I know it's not going to be easy. So if they get 2 more wins, that's 6-6. And this team keeps talking about, there's more out there for us. There's Auburn and South Carolina. I don't want to say look like wins, but with what they've done to Alabama a couple of weeks ago, they go on the road and beat Kentucky. If they play like that, they're beating Auburn and South Carolina. I mean, I just, from what I've seen. Now, can they go beat LSU? Ole Miss just proved that's a tough task in Death Valley. I would assume that's at night. That would help out Vanderbilt if it's not. And then Tennessee, Tennessee would be that 3rd win, I'm guessing. That's hard. I'm going to say over, just because I think this team has proven enough. Now, barring injury, I could change that, but I'm going to go over.
If they continue to play the way they're playing, it'll definitely go over. Now, again, like Chris said, 2 turnovers in 6 games. Can they repeat that in the back 6? It'd be awfully difficult to do it because 5 of your last 6 are SEC opponents. But if they continue to do what they're doing, yeah, absolutely they can.
Before I give you my answer, reminder, mailbag brought to you by Sutherland & Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call, 615-846-6200. See what your rights are and if they can help. Hope you do not need a personal injury lawyer, but boy, if you do, that is who you call. Terrific attorneys and terrific people. Guest line presented by John Levin, good friend of the show, who works for Wobble Bond Dickinson. He thanks the student athletes at Vanderbilt University for their dedication, effort, and hard work. And Yeaman Packaging Systems, leaders in end-of-line packaging automation, also helps sponsor our show. I'm going to book in the answers, and I will I will start with, I guess, the pessimistic end first. I feel like we're living in this continual daydream. But this daydream's gone around for like 7 weeks now. Giving you what I think the lines are going to look like, I think they're going to be about a 21-point dog against Texas, about a 6-point underdog at Auburn, about a 2-point underdog against South Carolina here, about a 13-point underdog against both LSU. That's on the road, in Tennessee here. Now, that said, pretty much every week except the Georgia State week, the predictive models have brought the lines closer to a degree that I never would have astonished. And that aside, like, throw all that stuff out. Okay. I don't know that there's a team in the country where the models and the stats mean more to than this one. Now, here's the problem with that. Everything gets pulled towards the middle. Like, they are playing with teams that last year were beating them by 40 points and winning those games, but they're also losing to Georgia State. So I think the range of outcomes for them, that is weird. I mean, it feels like, just based on watching them, if you don't know they're Vanderbilt and don't know the history and don't know that you always bet against, I feel like they might hit the over on that one. Call me crazy, and I may be. I mean, they could also win one.
The Georgia State thing it could be an outlier, because we knew on in the week it was a bad week.
Right.
Clark about it. We talked about, I heard some things, and hopefully that may be as important of a loss as we've ever had at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, you just wish they didn't have to take it, because if you don't have to take it,
yeah,
then the conversations we're having are about, Florida Bowls or I mean, crazy as it sounds, maybe even fringe playoff contention.
Yeah. Well, if we take care of business this weekend, which, again, I'm warning everybody, I don't think this will be a 55-0 type game. This will be I think we'll win the game, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as everyone thinks, just because they play possession football as well.
They're due for a clunker. I mean, they really are.
Sure.
Yeah, and Mike New does a good job. They don't have a great team this year. Ball State doesn't, but he's got a lot of respect from a lot of people around the country. But you mentioned Georgia State, Luke, and that week ahead, Clark was predicting it. I mean, Clark told you basically what was going to happen this week. He said the team is focused and working hard, battling through the wear and tear that normally sets in this time of year. But I'm proud of the way they've responded and looking forward to Saturday. So,
hey, let me interject something. It's a question to Luke here. Don't you feel like at this point, if they were out of order in their prep, that Clark would call them out publicly, Luke?
No, yeah, I agree. I dare say this: it was a scheduled loss to Georgia State.
Oh Lord. We had enough scheduled losses to podcast about last year.
There's the stack reference.
I hate to break. I do that. I don't know. I went low instead of high.
You did.
No, you're right. You're right, Chris. No, you're right. He would let us know. I think that's what I've mentioned that last week. Clark is very transparent about things, guys, almost to a fault.
Mostly. Sometimes not.
Well,
you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Certain things you can't be.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to be a politician.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a coach in the country that, yep, he's fully transparent. 100%. All right. Forever Gold. If the team is able to take care of business this week, as they should, we could see meaningful reps for both Nate Johnson and Drew Dickey. Which would you expect to shine more against Ball State if given the chance? Well, I took a look at Ball State's defensive stats. They're giving up 317 passing yards per game, which is worst in the MAC. So, judging by that, I think Drew Dickey in the second half, if he gets his chance, could be the quarterback to shine more per se. But they're also giving. It's not a great defense. They're also giving up on the ground 187 rushing yards per game, which is toward the bottom of the MAC as well. They're giving up 46 total points per game. So either way you slice it, I think any quarterback Vanderbilt throws out there should have success against Ball State. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Nate Johnson, you imagine, is the first guy out there, but do we see any Drew Dickey? And I'm really interested. We went through that dilemma, Chris, of who's the backup quarterback for a while. And I mean, I think at this point we do believe it's Nate Johnson. But Luke, I'll be interested to see if Drew Dickey's even able to get in. If Vanderbilt can get to a point in the game where they can do that.
Yeah, my wish for Saturday is that Diego doesn't have to play the whole game. I hope it's not. We go to the fourth quarter and we're ahead 24-14, and he's still got to finish the game. But that's out there, and like Chris said, they're due a clunker. They're due to lay it on the ground or throw some picks or do some stuff that they haven't done yet. We've said it all along. This team can beat the number one team in the country, and they can lose to the team that's in the hundreds.
Their defense is bad to another level that they have not seen other than Alcorn State. That per rushing play, if you take sacks out, they give up 7 yards a rush. They give up 9 yards a passing play, which subtracts sacks out of that. So like that comes off that number. Now, I think the likelihood that they get 3 quarterbacks a lot of playing time feels slim. Like they didn't even do that against Alcorn State. So I think to me, Johnson's there too. And probably given that I don't think he's completed a pass all year, I would think they'd want to get him reps. And so, I mean, you might see Dickey get a series or someone like that, but to me that feels far-fetched.
Okay. J2M, what is your best guess at the out versus probable injury list for Saturday? That's quite the question. I'll say I don't think Miles Capers is going to be able to go, which, I mean, I don't think should surprise. Clark did say he's back, walking around. I don't know that he practiced, but Capers, he did say Capers could play. I think Langston Patterson's still going to be out. That's just my thinking to try to get him ready for Texas. I think Zaylen Wood is still going to be out. Not feeling good about Zaylen's potential to play the rest of the season.
Ooh.
Probable. I can't remember, guys. Did anybody get banged up against Kentucky that you remember?
No one left.
But Diego, yeah.
No one left the game and didn't come back. So by that, I'd say no.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Capers will probably be out. Patterson out. Zaylen Wood will still be out, but we'll see on the guys who are probable there. We'll have to wait till tonight, Wednesday night, with the availability report. Denver Door, yes or no question. Assuming Vanderbilt wins, do you think College Game Day comes to Nashville for the Texas game? I want to believe that they will. I think we all do. I think we know how awesome that was back in 2008. Navy is playing host. Is it Notre Dame?
Notre Dame, yes.
Notre Dame plays host to Notre Dame, but that game's at MetLife. If you're Game Day, do you really want to have it at MetLife Stadium? I'm not saying the crowd will be bad, or do you want to go to Vanderbilt for the first time since 2008? They highlighted Diego as Diego in the doors on Game Day last week. I've got a feeling they might, guys. I mean, you're 5-2. They'll be ranked. I don't know what they'll be ranked. I would think 23rd or 24th potentially, Chris. Maybe depending on the margin against Ball State. But Michigan plays Illinois, number 22 versus 24 this week. That'll knock one of them out. They'll be ranked. Why not? I mean, why not, Luke? I don't know the reason why you wouldn't. Now, the only thing I could see, Texas is hosting Game Day this weekend. They'll be on the road, so I don't think that would stop them, but it should either way. I don't know if it will, but it should be in Nashville, Luke. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think there's more. There's a better than 50-50 chance of it. I don't know, and you guys may know this. Is where the SEC live, whatever, is that already predetermined throughout the season?
SEC Nation.
So.
Yes.
No, I think they announced that on Sunday or Saturday night. I think
it'll definitely be that if it's not the national game, because it's a 2:30 game.
I'm looking at this. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Billy. You finish.
You think Texas has to beat Georgia? I wonder if that's a stipulation.
So probably.
Okay. Because that worst
that may
case
not
scenario,
happen. Texas loses, Vanderbilt loses, and then forget it. We're not even having a conversation. I think that's highly unlikely that both those happen.
Yeah. So I just wonder. There are still some moving parts, but I'll say
Well,
this: if
let,
they
let
would have
me let me
beaten,
tell you. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Let me let you finish. Then I do have what I think are the contending games up. So
no, I was just going to say if they beat Georgia State, I mean, it's a lock basically for it to be in Nashville.
well, I'll give you the pessimistic end first, and then I'll give you the optimistic view. Okay, games that could contend with Syracuse and Pitt. Syracuse is 5-1. Pitt's unbeaten, and let me see who they've got this week. Because I think Syracuse is kind of a pretender to me. Okay, Syracuse is off this week. Pitt, I think Pitt's also off this week. So, yeah, okay. So that's one that's on the board. That's at Pitt. Pitt's the unbeaten team. Boise State, UNLV. That could be a sneaky game potentially. Boise State's ranked, probably your top contender to get one of those 12 playoff bids. UNLV's 5-1. That's in Vegas. I think that would obviously be attractive for reasons outside of football. Missouri Bama, I don't think has the appeal that it would. Now, here's another one: LSU A&M. Both teams. Let's see. LSU this weekend has got Arkansas on the road. LSU wins that one. It is clearly, I mean, if it's not already, LSU's already in the playoff chase. But you win that one, you're more in there. And A&M this weekend has got Mississippi State on the road. It will win that one. I'm pretty confident. That's on the board of contenders. And Nebraska, Ohio State, maybe Ohio State losing last week. Notre Dame, Navy would be one for reasons you pointed out. I think that is about it. SMU and Duke, I don't think they're going to pick that one over Vandy. I mean, plus, I mean, like you said, they've been hyping up Vanderbilt. They did a feature on Diego last week on game day. Kirk Herbstreit, something. I mean, and let's face it, who does not look for an excuse to come to Nashville?
Got it. Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you're asking the game day crew, hey, you guys want to go to Nashville or go up to East Rutherford, New Jersey,
Or
where
Durham.
it could be raining and
Yeah.
or Durham. They already went to College Station week 1 against Notre Dame, and that they've done double before, but that's just another excuse. And Syracuse Pitt actually play on Thursday night, Chris.
Oh, okay. Didn't see that. Well, and if you're going to go they're going to go Texas because they've already been there. They've already done a Notre Dame game, even though it was a road game. So I don't know if Vanderbilt wins and Texas wins, and I think that's both what's going to happen. That's the game I would pick. Just trying to handicap it.
It'll be interesting.
Not to mention Vanderbilt's dominance in the series.
And there goes Billy boy.
You know about the Vandy Texas series history, don't you?
Vanderbilt's 8-3-1.
Yep.
Only team in the SEC to have a winning record against them.
No, I haven't played in 100 years, but what's that matter?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Sorry, guys. Wi-Fi monster.
What did you say? Oh.
Okay. And all of a sudden, I've lost the mailbag, Chris.
That's not good.
Stole around a little bit, guys.
That's why we pay Billy the big bucks.
Well, let's talk about basketball.
Okay.
What did you garner from yesterday, you guys?
I garner the league is going to be brutally tough to a degree that we've never seen it.
I don't know, and I'm not pushing back, but I guess I'm just questioning how the heck do we know anything? Everybody, like we've got 90% new roster. Yeah. Teams have new rosters. How will Calipari do at Arkansas? It's hard for me to handicap that stuff, man.
Yeah. It is for me too. I just see a lot of talent and a lot of coaches. Like I think literally half the coaches in the league have been to an Elite Eight. That's one thing. You got some of your top teams in an era where you don't see a lot of familiar names, like Auburn's returning Janai Broome and 5 or 6 other key pieces. Alabama's bringing back Sears and Grant Nelson. Tennessee's got Zakai Ziegler back. And so I think that's one place that the top teams start out ahead of Vandy, and even a lot of the lower tier teams do. Like they've got some guys that like, for example, like Blue Cane, Silas Demery at Georgia. That's a team that's getting picked 11th or 12th. Well, they were good players for Georgia last year. And then everybody adds transfers and you just don't know. I think we're Vanderbilt at a disadvantage in perception and probably reality is that everybody else has at least got a couple of, well, Kentucky doesn't, but that's also Kentucky. Most teams got a couple of guys that log some big minutes at their school that you kind of know what you're getting there. There's no, was this guy from William and Mary who led them in scoring? Is that going to work out or not? You kind of know what guys that have been there, and that's where they're at a big disadvantage. I think other than Kentucky, which returns, I saw yesterday, 0.1% of its production out of a couple of walk-ons. I think they're worse off than anybody in that category, for whatever that's worth. Now, the team wasn't very good, but either way you slice it, that's not a good starting point.
I would take anybody's bet that Vanderbilt will not finish 16th. I will tell you that.
I would go with that.
Yeah. I'm with you too. Obviously, they're picked last there, but golden parachute, back to the mailbag here. What are your predictions for the finish within the SEC? And if higher than last, what rationale supports your prediction? Well, I think the rationale, guys, is number one, they're an older team. They're one of the older teams in the SEC. Last year, South Carolina was picked last, brought in a bunch of transfers with Lamont Paris. Look what they ended up doing. They ended up making the tournament. So I think that's a good case for that for Vanderbilt. But the offense, this is a very unique offense, and Byington was able to quickly pick out guys that he thinks can fit within his offense. Now, number one, of course, they've got to gel together, and I'm interested to see how they do that early on. They've got a cakewalk of a non-conference schedule. I mean, let's just say it how it is. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a good thing for this team, and obviously after last year they needed that. But Luke, I don't know. I mean, can they finish top half? Probably not, just because how good the league is. But I think they could be at the top of the bottom half, maybe.
I think there's going to be 9 or 10 teams get a bid, and then there'll be a couple of more get NIT bids. And I think Vanderbilt falls in that 9 to 12 range. I mean, if everything goes right and they get Kajani Wright back 2 months into the season and he can help them late in the season with fresh legs, because that's my only part that I worry about, and I'm probably worrying too much about it, is our size. We don't have a rim protector, so to speak. And but yeah, I think between 9 and 12 is where we're going to finish.
The right thing, I talked to Joey, and I didn't ask him everything he knows. He doesn't think they'll see Wright at all this season. So I think 2 months feels very optimistic, if not maybe off the board. I don't know what the issue is there. I got my blue ribbon last night. Chris Dortch and a friend of mine, and he knows this as well as anybody. And our Joey Dwyer actually wrote the Vanderbilt preview for blue ribbon, but they pick them 14th out of 16. I think that's probably close to where I put them. I think teams that are potentially in their range, LSU, Oklahoma, South Carolina. He's got Oklahoma 15, South Carolina 16. I'm not as big on Mississippi State as everybody else, but Chris Jan's always, like, he's won 20 games pretty much every season. They always figure it out. I feel like if they – I'm more towards the bottom end of what Luke is saying, and that might even be a tad optimistic, but who knows? The size does concern me a lot. They just – and I know it's a different day and age, but, like, at some point it matters.
Well, we're not shooting it well. I mean, I think this is not like the old Paul Westhead teams of Loyola Marymount, but I can tell you this, and I've seen 2 or 3 practices. This is a run, get the ball out of the net, and go. And on days when they shoot it well and get to the rim well and execute, they're going to beat somebody some teams they shouldn't beat.
Yeah. Chris, you remember how well Nate Oates did in his first year at Alabama?
What was his record? I don't remember now.
Well, I can't remember either. I was legitimately okay. Well,
that was a question.
No, it was a legit question. While you look it up, I think that could be a good indicator of, okay, this offense, it can work, but you got to wait till you get, maybe Byington doesn't have the center he wants. Maybe he doesn't have the point guard he wants. So Chris, I think you could compare it to a Nate Oates type first year where he kind of had to work out through the transfer portal, and you kind of had to fight through, but you could still be fun to watch and you could still score,
Yeah. Okay, here's your answer. Their first year, they went 16-15 overall, 8-10 in the league, which was 9th. against a league that's not nearly as good as it is now. So that shows me a team that got better and more used to it as the season went on. And another one, this is kind of the other end of the spectrum because he built it differently. But I forgot that Rick Barnes did not go to the tournament his first 2 years at Tennessee after going, 17 of 18 at Texas and every year since. It takes time to build that foundation and that culture. And I would argue that I don't remember the exact situations of Alabama and Tennessee. Now, I know Tennessee's was pretty bad because that was when the Donnie Tyndall stuff kind of rocked them. But I don't think that Vanderbilt's was – so there wasn't a better situation than either of those. I mean, Stack took the program down to the depths of basketball purgatory at the end.
All right, let's get back in. Yeah, I think there are. We do have a few more football questions here in the mailbag. Try to rumble through some of these. G-Barks24, based on their production this season, Cedric Alexander and A.J. Newberry seem to be emerging as an underrated tandem in the SEC. What do you guys think of their performances this season, and do you see them as potential NFL players in the future? Well, they've combined for 483 yards and 8 touchdowns. And if you combine their average per carry, it's about 4.5 or so. I think A.J. Newberry has been maybe not a surprise. I thought he could do some things this year, but he's been even better than I expected, Luke. And in terms of NFL, I'm not sure. I think A.J. Newberry might have a higher ceiling just because the size. But Cedric Alexander, there's a market for those type of players in the NFL. I mean, you look at what Ray Davis is doing. He had a great night on Monday night with the Bills. You look at a guy like Tajay Spears, who's not the biggest guy, but he's physical. He can catch out of the backfield. I think all things go right. Cedric stays healthy. Who knows?
Yeah, both those guys, I mean, what are they academically? I'm sorry. Are they juniors, sophomores? I'm not sure.
Sophomores.
Okay. So they got
your guys.
It's a little too early to project it, but I will say this, and I'm not trying to knock either one of them, but the system has a lot to do with their success. That and the fact that they're being asked to block a lot, so they've gotten better at it. And I just feel like it's just a little bit too early to tell on those two.
Yeah, they're both listed in the high 190s. That's you probably need another 20 pounds to really put yourself more firmly on that kind of ground. But Luke's right. Running backs develop late. You see guys, and I'm not calling these guys, ordinary, but they're okay backs. They're not great backs right now. Sometimes you see guys bust out and have a 1,500-yard season, junior, senior year, and that could put them on the radar. To me, it feels a little premature, but I wouldn't say it can't happen.
No.
Another one from G-Barks24. Kentucky defenders appeared to get some extra shots in on Pavia after the whistle on Saturday. Does Clark need to work the refs more and be in their ear so that doesn't keep happening? Well, I think Clark this year, he's been in the officials' ears. Maybe not about that specifically, but Clark's been pretty animated at times this season. I don't know that I noticed a ton of that on Saturday. I think there was a point in Kentucky. You saw one. I don't know if this was just unlucky or guy didn't see him. He got kicked in the shin, I think, after a play, and who knows, what the intention was. But Kentucky sent a blitz, and they're coming after him. So I don't know. If it gets to a point, Luke, where it does get bad, I'm sure Clark will get in the ear. But I don't know that I noticed a ton of extra shots on Saturday.
Let me tell you something about college kids and kids that compete every Saturday. They're sick of hearing about Diego Pavia. And when they line up against him and he frustrates them like they do, he's a marked man. He's going to take a lot of cheap shots. As we go on throughout this schedule, watch for that to happen even more. And what the play you're talking about, Billy, is an old trick in the book called a leg whip. You act like you're just rolling over and you sling your leg right at your target. So that was intentional.
Wow.
Wow. That's the Luke and that's the Luke. It's Vanderbilt football encyclopedia coming through there.
They might need to tone the talk down a little bit now that I hear that and think about it.
I figured it was. He had to have known Pavia's there, but the old leg whip, that I like that. Okay. Columbiano Door, who do you bet is starting next year? Nate Johnson, another quarterback on the roster or a transfer? I think a transfer. I think, again, it's nothing against Nate. I just, I think Vanderbilt will go find a quarterback, and who knows, maybe we see some things from Nate down the stretch, like if Pavia gets hurt. But like you said, Chris, he hasn't attempted a pass, so he hasn't, even against Alcorn State, he didn't have much of a chance to go out there, and he ran a 75-yard video game touchdown, and that felt like his only possession. But I think a transfer. I don't know what you guys think.
I'm going to throw a wild card at you a little bit. I think Jeremy St. Hilaire can run, even though he's a bigger kid, not near as elusive or whatever, but he's a tall 6'3" guy, and he's got some skills, guys, and arm strength. I look for him to have a shot, a puncher's chance to start.
I have no idea. I mean, Blaze Berlowitz, I mean, that's a guy that's been I don't know what he's been doing since fall camp left, but I mean, that is a complicated, intricate, confusing system. I would think familiarity there, like if he's got the ability to do it, would put him on the radar. But guys, let's look at this for a minute, okay? If we're naming top players on this team, who's your top 5 guys right now? Luke, I'll start with you. And I think you're going to see where I'm going to go.
Are we talking offense or total?
The whole team.
Whole team. Well, you have to say Diego. Gunnar Hansen on the offensive line. Langston Patterson, C.J. Taylor. And probably Zaylen Wood when he's healthy.
Billy?
Yeah, I would throw Stowers in there too. I don't know if you probably just forgot him, Luke, but yeah. I mean, look, Pavia and Stowers, I would honestly put at the top. I think Stowers is an NFL tight end down the road. Pavia has talked about Gunnar Hansen being an NFL left tackle, so I'd throw Gunnar Hansen in there. Other than that, offensively, Skinner and Sherrill, we'll see. But defensively, Fontenette, C.J. Taylor, and Langston Patterson. Right now are those guys, Chris. I think that's 6, 7 guys. But
yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of guys after 5, 6, 7 you could debate. Hansen, probably maybe in there. C.J. Taylor, Langston Patterson. I don't know if they either had quite the seasons that you thought they could have, especially with Patterson being hurt. But they're in discussion. But the first 3 guys I thought of, guys, Pavia, Stowers, and Fontenette. Well, they all have in common
transfers.
Yeah. And Zaylen Wood would have been a dude too, had he been healthy, and the 2 cornerbacks. What you have is you got proof of concept, because you got to go back to the same boosters, because I think there were some pretty strong claims made that if we get some money to play with in the portal, we can flip this thing quicker than you think. Right now, they are winning that argument big time. If you finish strong, you say you get 7 wins in the regular season, you can go back to those same guys and say, hey, look what we did. There's no reason you can't go get a really good quarterback in the portal if you need to. So I think, to me, the thing that's going a little under discussed is resources because of what you just did.
Getting 2 corners. Getting two more corners again for next year is imperative.
Yeah.
In the portal. You can't do it with young guys. I mean, Martell Heights turned into a really good player. Really good. But I think, is Kobe Taylor gone after this year?
That's a good question.
No. I'll look that one up.
I want to say he is.
So you're talking, yeah. And Tyson Russell's gone.
Kobe Taylor is a senior.
Okay. Plus, who knows anymore? I mean, you got guys. I saw a guy the other day somehow had played 8 years. How does that happen? I don't
Cam Rising?
Yeah, Cam Rising.
Are you thinking him or the Oregon tight end who's in his 9th year? I think he's been hurt. Like he's broken every bone in his body, I think, or sprained every joint or whatever, or maybe both.
Guys are not only getting NIL money; they're going to get the Social Security check.
AARP card.
Right.
Oh gosh. George had a good line yesterday. He said these players go from being a teenager to having their AARP card in the span of their college
I'm just going to make a ask a question? Like if you're like 8-9 years into football and you keep getting years because you keep getting hurt and you're still in college because you're not good enough to be in the NFL, you might ask yourself some hard questions about what you're doing here.
It's like Rodney Dangerfield and back to school.
Oh gosh. I think that's it for the mailbag.
All right. Parting thoughts. Luke, you first.
I'm not trying to put a wet blanket on anything, but I think Saturday, maybe we may be chewing our nails for a quarter or two, but I do think we'll win the game. But I just want to caution everybody to think it's going to be another 55-0 win. I don't see that.
Yeah, I'm with you, Luke, and I know Clark has talked positively so far this week. It's always a big indicator of what he says on Thursdays before game days, so I'll be looking forward to that. But they got to keep it rolling, keep building, and I think it'll be interesting to see offensively what more do they put in. What it feels like every game there's a new wrinkle. So I think I'll be looking for that. But they got to stay healthy too. This is a big week to stay healthy. You should be able to. You should get up, I think, 30 or so. Like if you could get up 31-7 at the half and you feel like you don't even have to play Pavia, you don't have to throw Taylor out there or Fontenette, I think that'd be huge. Now it's probably not going to happen, but I think that's a good goal, Chris. Just keep this group healthy and prepared for Texas.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if they can take care of business, rest a few guys, maintain focus, not get a big head. The last thing you want to hear if you're Vanderbilt is a Tuesday press conference talking about, well, we should have seen it coming with our preparation. You would hope that you've already crossed that bridge or not going back over it the other way. But yeah, I mean, for the first time in a while, man, the second half of football season's got a lot of intrigue to it.
Really does.
It's fun.
Yeah. All right. Thank you to everybody listening. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Billy and Luke. I'm Chris Lee. You've been watching and listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, part of the 440 Sports Network.